Welcome to Mighty Filmmakers Podcast, Raindance Film Festival Special Edition. Is it? Wait, 1 sec. What? Sorry, what was it? Raindance Film Festival Special.
No, a Raindance Film Festival Edition.
What?
You put, I think it was just Raindance Film
Special.
Festival Edition. But Special Edition makes it sound grander, right?
Special Edition.
You know? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I like it.
All right. Well, special. Yeah, special. I'll say just special.
Yeah, okay.
Great, I feel special.
Today we are dissecting another filmmaker. We're talking about 5 steps of filmmaking.
Yep.
And my name is Asatuurs.
And I'm Josh.
And today we're going to be talking to Evgeny Afineevsky, film director, filmmaker, and I guess tell us a bit more about yourself.
Evgeny Afineevsky, living in States, born in former Soviet Union, raised in Israel. Very complicated background, but I guess that makes you somebody who have, with the mixed background, also a crazy mixed ideas of filmmaking. I did a variety of movies, from crazy feature debut, Oy My Son Is Gay, a long time ago. I directed the family comedy, a lot of awards. And then into serious movies, Winter on Fire, Ukrainians Fight for Freedom, that Netflix brought to the Oscar stage in 2015-16. But we lost to Emmy Winehouse, which is British. So yeah, Asif Kapadia did an amazing job with Emmy. And then Syria, Cries from Syria, which was HBO project that I did. And then following Francesco, Pope Francis story, which was through pandemic. It was interesting and challenging, which I love because it was a school that transitioned me from one way of filmmaking into another, because we always will have before pandemic filmmaking process and post-production and after pandemic. So yes, I was exactly in that period making the documentary feature with Pope Francis, and I started before and I ended after. And then during the release of Francesco, full-scale invasion started, and I went back to the stories of Ukraine. I did, very challenging story in 6 months, summarizing all what happens in Ukraine. It was Freedom on Fire, and we did literally in 6 months because the full-scale started on basically 24th of February 22, and already in last days of August, the movie was at Venice Film Festival where it's premiered. So literally the most challenging filmmaking, but we did it. And then this movie was updated like 3 times because the war still was ongoing. It's another kind of way of storytelling. And then during this process, I saw interesting stories with the kids. And it was a decision to try to give to the kids their own voice through all this war conflict. But to do it as usual, not just from the perspective of they are weak and literally weak souls, but to show it from the perspective that they're strong, they're resilient, they're unbroken, they have hope, and they see the future. And I think that's what led me to Raindance, my movie Children in the Fire, which went also in another way experimental, because I wanted to try to experiment things through the mind of the kids, and not just to show a traditional news that covering exactly the events that kids been involved, but instead to try to go into their minds through the childish kind of way, and it was animation. So for the first time, I tried to merge 2 mediums. Some people saying, oh, that's not documentary then, because you are using art and it's animation. And some people say, no, it's animation and that's it. And some people say, no, you're still doing doc, because we had Flea, we had Waltz with Bashir. But again, Flea was completely from A to Z animation, Waltz with Bashir. Also, here I tried to navigate a story going back and forth. And it was interesting and challenging. But I'm sure we will be talking about challenges and how we constructing the ideas through the podcast. But that's the last movie that brought me to Raindance.
That's a nice point, actually, because I was wondering, like, when you first start a project, like, how do you choose your subject matter, and how do you find your way into it?
You know, it's interesting because I never was hired. I always was bumping into the ideas, bumping into the stories that resonates with me, stories that I fall in love, stories that I found myself in the middle. Like my Winter on Fire, let's go back. Oive was a long journey for me, and it was a script, and finally I decided, not instead of producing, directing this. And it was interesting journey. But then I found myself in the middle of nowhere with the friends after the movie was done and he promoted and it was released. And I found myself in the middle of situations where a lot of friends were divorcing. And I realized that I wanted to give story to divorced children. And I did a small movie, journey through the divorce journey through the kids' eyes. Again, I not was hired. I just found myself and I realized, okay, let's give a voice to these kids. You take an idea and then you execute an idea. And that's the beauty between documentary filmmaking and the scripted features. Because scripted features, when you have idea, you need to have also money to develop this into the script. Then the script need to become a feature, so you need also to have a cast. It means you need to hire a casting director. You need to have a money. And when you have any casting director, it's not enough because every big feature actor demanding pay-or-play, then you for sure need to have a lot of money in your bank account. So that's the long journey with the scripted features. With documentary, you finding yourself in the middle of the story, you take any camera, you dive in and you filming. That's how I transitioned literally into the documentary filmmaking because that's what was kind of given to me. Finishing with the kids, one of my friends by this time who wanted to work with me was in Ukraine. And he called me and said, hey, something happening here. You should come, you should see if we can do something. And I found myself filming Revolution of Dignity of Ukraine, 2013-14. And then I created Winter on Fire. We finished Winter on Fire, it was September 2015. And through the period of summer 2015, I was a lot in Europe finishing post-production. And I saw all the news about the refugee crisis because Syrian people were fleeing Syria, so and so and so. And I met a lot of people. And it's not was exactly what it was portraying in the news. And then in, I think, middle of September 2015, I was in Toronto for the premiere of Winter on Fire. And Amran Kurdi's story, the little 3-year boy body was found on the shores of Badrum because they were trying to flee the Syria. And you know what? I think that pushed me to tell the story of these people. And then 6 months later, in the beginning of 2016, I started to do Cries from Syria. I finished the movie actually the same year, which was remarkable for 1 year. The documentary. We performed Cries from Syria. The world premiere was Sundance 2017. And I realized that my movies creating call for action. So from idea that I developing, I put in the messages through the people, giving voice to voiceless, that can be inspiration to other people, no matter what. I saw it by actually Winter on Fire because in 2016, a lot of people on the streets of Venezuela were watching the movie, and it became some kind of a manual for revolution for them against their dictatorship. And then I saw it in other places. So for me, I realized that I have a power. And the movies are becoming AAA, not Alcoholic Anonymous, but AAA, activism, advocacy, and action. So they are literally call for action. So that was motivation. And then I started to develop ideas, since we're talking about 5 points. What can be the story that can summarize disasters that we as humans created on this world and to show something that can uplift and show the path to get out of these disasters. Climate change, refugee crisis, interreligious thing. We can see right now outside demonstrations, but it's all religious bullshit that is going right now. So I literally LGBTQ issues that they not accepted in many places. All these elements, I try to find something that can connect all these topics and to show us that we need to accept things. We need to find the path to basically rewire us in the positive things and do good things. And somebody said to me, it was end of 2017, somebody said to me, what about Pope Francis? He is leading in all these topics. And I said, he's the head of Catholic Church, I'm Jewish, what I can do. But this idea, since we're talking about ideas, was not leaving me. And I started to do research because I always doing research, and I think that's another point for all of our listeners, on the topics that I'm doing stories. And extensive research showed me that Pope Francis is on top of interfaith dialogue. He's supporting LGBTQ. He's supporting women empowerment. He was trying to mediate between Israel and Palestine. He literally tried to do a meeting between Shimon Peres and Mahmoud Abbas, which was blown by media by both sides in 2015 in Jerusalem. So a week later, he pulled everybody into Vatican and did this historic meeting. So again, both sides blow this media. Media will hate me for that. Anyway, it was a lot of topics that I saw that France is doing. And Myanmar and Bangladesh and the Holocaust and Armenian genocide. And it was interesting to see that all these topics are close to him. And what was also interesting, his international travel was always with a lot of media, and he used this to spotlight the issues. No matter if it's related to the Catholic world, to the Muslim world, he was using this to highlight things and emphasize how important to change. I went to Vatican in 2018, the beginning of the year, and I tried to engage Vatican into a conversation that I want to do a movie about Pope. Of course, for our listeners, it will be a great story that when you're getting rejection or when you're saying, when you're getting no, and I not exactly got no, the prefect of communications by this time it was Monsignor Dario Vegano, amazing person, big buff in the movies. He was in jury of Venice many times, great friend. Dario said to me, Evgeny, I know who you are, but you can go and do a movie like everybody else, but I'm not promising you a meeting with the Pope. And I said, okay. And I went to my traditional routes. I did research. I think here the point number 1 and 2, probably for you guys. I did research and I tried to see what are the routes and the points that can lead me to Pope myself. And of course, roots are Argentina. He was born there. It means it must be people who are trusted by him and who are still close to him despite his Pope. And I went to Argentina, A, to do interviews, to learn about him, and B, to get connected to these roots. And that's step number 1, when you want to get to challenging personality that you want to interview, no matter if it's a Pope, or if it's a celebrity, or if it's a king. It's a way how you want to approach this topic. So I went to Argentina, I interviewed people, and of course I met all his friends. I even met a daughter of his former girlfriend. The girlfriend was already dead, but I interviewed even the daughter of his former girlfriend. It's interesting. He's a Pope. So all these people eventually led me to A, understand his personality, B, understand who he is, who he was, and it was interesting because who he was in the past and who he was as the Pope was almost the same. He not changed. So eventually, on the same 2018, I already got into conversations with Pope Francis. Despite the Vatican not was exactly into this mode, You know what? I suggest to all fellow filmmakers, break the rules and then apologize. So that's one thing. And also remember, in my case, Vatican have more than 2 options. Usually we have 2 options. It's the door and the window. So if you're getting through the door and you're not able to, the door is closed, you're going through the window. In my case, I had also a chimney of Sixteen Chapel. So I eventually got to the Pope because Pope was elected in Sixteen Chapel and the chimney is always helpful. So instead of white smoke, they had Evgeny going through the chimney. So that's eventually brought me to Pope and we started collaborating. Of course, he gave me all freedom and he was keeping distance through the process. Again, for us filmmakers, it's not rejection, but he explained to me that distance was given to me for the purpose of being objective. And my luck, and I think it comes to the point 1, that I was not biased to any of my stories. Being born in Russia, I was able to craft the story about Ukraine, being objective. Being raised in Israel and serving Israeli military, I told the story about Syrian refugees and all Syrian crisis. Again, I've been objective. I not was taking any sides. I was giving voice to voiceless. Here, a Jewish gay boy who is coming to the Catholic Church. So it was completely opposite. And I not was a church can't say me, oh, we will expel you if you will not tell how great we are. You need to support everything what we will tell you. So I had this luxury of the freedom of the artist here and my objectivity as a, let's say, documentary journalist. And it all comes to your probably point 1 where you're starting all your thing. And
do you know what?
I think there's multiple. I think you've covered multiple points. I really liked what you said about your films being a call to action. I think that's a great point. I think you mentioned research and the importance of research, and being objective and not bringing your biases to these types of topics.
Yeah, I think definitely we have at least 2 points there. Call to action is a good one. It's a very good one. Yes, because your work is call to action. That's what you said, and I guess that could be our first point of your process, because that's how you approach your filmmaking, and your films are telling messages and actually inviting people to understand the topic and to kind of observe and learn about it, and then obviously make their own.
But you just said a good thing, learn. I think for us, for documentary filmmakers today, we who are objective, because there is a lot of filmmakers who are working for hire, and I saw it, and they are voicing certain networks and the messages that networks want to push into the audience. The ones that are cherishing freedom of speech, the ones that want to fight for the freedom, for the truth, I think it's important to admit that we are freedom fighters and we are truth tellers. And it's really important. We are here to educate audience, back to your education, educate audience on the topics that sometimes lost in the news or not shown specifically in the news. I will give you a classical story. Syria had chemical poisoning attacks every month during, let's say, 2016, 17, 18. Only once a year, because you can't do it every month. We had it in the news. So again, we giving voice, it's us, filmmakers, to the voiceless, and we bring in these stories. But the most important, and I think I learned this from my creative team at Winter on Fire, to take in consideration that not everybody in the audience are sophisticated and know the story. So, hey, friends filmmakers, please consider that you're doing movie for dummies. So take it from zero. Because when you're telling this story, and you are storytellers, you need to educate your audience from A to Z. What was before and how people got to this point. It is important, because otherwise you just bring in a clip in the news and the audience is only present in a small period of time. You need to have a story where is beginning, middle, and end. And it's important to remember, you're doing movie for dummies. Winter on Fire, it's revolution for dummies. Christ from Syria is refugee crisis for dummies. Francesco is our world for dummies. And that's how I approach in my movies. I always trying to educate the audience and go to A, B, C, what was before, and go towards the end through the story. Yeah.
I guess that leads us to the next step, which you're saying, take it from zero. I guess that's a good point. Take it from zero and focus on overall story and try to be very precise and consistent and actually explain what's going on, give some context to things.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and it is important, right? Look, as you say, if you do want to be objective, you do need to try and present like as much of the information as possible so that people can take their own interpretation.
Correct, but you still need to have all this information in a certain way of the story connected. Because I will give you example. In the Francesco movie, in a pop movie, some big producers in Hollywood said, movie with the Pope, you need to start with the Pope's election. You put this at the end. I said, so what? I put it his personality and things in the beginning. I put it something that was very deeply important for him in the beginning. Not the election. We all knew that he was elected Pope. So I just wanted, at the end of the movie, reminded where it all started of his journey. But again, that comes to the idea of creativity, because we're all artists. And it's important to remember from the day one, from the zero. But still give the amount of the information that through this journey, and I not was actually, in my story with the Francis, I not was going and following the dates and chronological stuff. That's, I said from the beginning, I was following the thread of the stories, that one was leading to another, one was leading to another. And it was important for me because through this thread, like for example, when I touched to the topic of the refugees, it's obviously led me to that his family was refugees, Pope's family. And I was able to tell the beginning of the Pope Francis family in Argentina. So you able to navigate it creatively. And again, I'm probably going to the next points right now. But what I'm saying, it's important to be able to, not necessary to do it one by one after another, but to make it as a story where still exists beginning, middle, and end, and you're able to educate through the whole story your audience.
We're talking about objectivity, but we could argue that you, as a filmmaker, bringing yourself into the situation, as well as bringing yourself into the movie. How do you deal with that, and how do you make sure that it's not Evgeny who is affecting the situation in any way where you are as an observer?
Because I'm giving the voice to the people. It's their voices. I'm not trying to influence them. I'm just asking them to tell their stories, their experience, and I'm the one who is massaging this in a way through my editor and through the picture of B-roll, or in that case with the kids is animation, to the ability that the viewership can understand the topic, can feel emotion, because it's important. I think emotion is an important thing for us to bring out from our audience. Then we can create call for action. Because if you're not causing any emotion to your audience, then there is no call for action. So that's how I am operating. I'm allowing them to tell me story. I'm not telling them what to say. I am asking them questions. Please tell me. Please share. And then they have their freedom.
Anything you want to add to this?
No, I think you've. I think you cover subjects so thoroughly.
There's a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot too.
But I see you've got what?
I have quite a lot, so I'm trying to figure out what are those steps. There's, you provided a lot of little nuggets for documentary filmmakers, and about the story, importance of the story, about giving voices, about starting the story from kind of zero and thinking about educating your viewer. That's another point, very good point. And allowing to tell the story as well. And one thing actually what you said was really like that, massaging through editing. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think that's another point. Massaging through editing.
You're massaging this via paper cut, via ideas on a paper, and it's really helpful. Sometimes it's also helpful, and I can tell you for the filmmakers, guys, try to do a long cut if you are putting things together, and print the dialogue, and go through the dialogue with the marker and see what can be literally deleted and what can stay. Forget about how it's look like, because you can always shuffle the scenes, do coverage with B-roll over this. But for you, the narrative, to reshape the narrative, sometimes it's tricky in front of the computer. But print it and go through the narrative with the pencil, with the marker. It's also helping to reshape the narrative. So again, you can use the board with the paper cut. You can do reshaping of the narrative in the paper. So that's the massaging.
That's nice. That's a good point. That's an interesting way of doing things, and again, it plays into perception as well. So you as a filmmaker and creative, some people are more visual. Some people like to actually watch images and listen to sounds, and some people, like reading and doing edits in text, which is a good option for documentary.
You using all tools that exist. I'm a very visual person. Sometimes I need to see. When I was dealing right now with animation, I had different ways of previews and all kind of stuff. I needed to see animation. It was my struggle, because when we were doing storyboards for me, I still was struggling, because I used to direct actors. I used to see things. And for me, animation was very tricky to touch this new medium for me. And I'm a visual person. So here, for example, I not was able just to do it based on the storyboards, or even previews was kind of looking ridiculous, where the computer was doing minimum movements, and the characters were like very strange for me. So yes, I am a visual person, and certain things, like you just said, not working for people. I found myself with the paper cut and with when you need to massage narrative, specifically when you need to stream the cut. Sometimes these type of the things help. Specifically when you're printing these and you need to shrink it a little bit, and shrinking sometimes is important. We sometimes have a cut of 3 hours, and you need to get it into below 2. So having this said, that you can read the narrative and understand, helps a lot when you're trimming this.
It's so when you've got that cut that's like 3 hours long or even longer, as I say with documentaries, it can get quite unwieldy, right? What's the first thing you try and do when you're thinking, okay, I need to get this down to 2 hours?
I can do a couple of things. I can rewatch it and make my notes of what is making sense, what I can cut. I can always do print and do narrative trimming, seeing that I'm not losing anything when I'm cutting the narrative. So that's usually the 2 ways to trim. Either when I'm watching this visually. Again, it depends on what stage of the cut you are also, because visual trimming is easy when you're in earlier stages. The narrative trimming on a paper is something that you will do on a late stages, where the cut already is sophisticated and you literally need to trim 1 sentence here, a few words here. That's much easier to do on a printed version.
I wanted to go back all the way to the beginning of our conversation, though, because there is one question I really would like to know your perspective on, which is how specifically, so for example, in documentary filmmaking, how specifically, so you're saying you bumping into topics you enjoy or you feel like it's important to talk about it, but what would you say is the biggest sort of indication for young filmmaker, for example, that this is the right topic to pick for a movie?
You need to feel some kind of connection. like I stopped my journey on the Francis. So I came to Pop, and I found myself engaged in this. I found myself connected. I finished Pop Francis 21. During 21, I saw a lot of great things. 2021, we actually presented the movie in 2020 during the pandemic. I finished the movie, and you can see great scenes that we shot in Rome when the empty square and Pop is alone there. In 2020, Venice was the first festival that opened actually in a very small kind of capacity in September. And then the second festival in Europe that opened in a very limited capacity was Rome Film Festival. We literally presented the movie there in 2020. And then it was a full lockdown. So I was in really one of the festivals. And I saw how, for example, the Pope's words of civil union, endorsement of civil union, literally shake the world. And then next year, I saw how some other stories in my movie reshaped the world, like separation of the families. I got a call and a letter from the toy maker in Beverly Hills who said, wow, I saw the eyes of these kids in your movie, how I can do something for them. And months later, we delivered into the facilities of immigration 16,000 toys for these children. So it's a call for action. It's inspiration. But I'm going back to the points how I find in myself. I finished Francis, and the movie was released in 21. And then I was thinking, okay, I will take a break, and I will be with my son, who was just born in 21. And then, beginning of 22, full-scale invasion. Of course, who is the primary person who told the story of Ukrainian revolution to the world? Me. Immediately, everybody looked at me, and I was already there, trying to document and in the same time summarize the story. Because what I realized when I finished Winter on Fire and I was asked if I will be doing any other movies about Ukraine, I said, no. There is great filmmakers there. I'm not doing anything else. I don't want to be framed as just Ukrainian filmmaker, which I'm not. So I was kind of giving it to the local filmmakers, and the war that started immediately after Maidan, MH17, we all know that was the problem that basically this war in Ukraine, the limited amount of the, again, it's not was the full scale, it was just the start of the war, and annexation of Crimea, and Donetsk, Lugansk, and all these things. So I was avoiding this topic. But then when the full scale happened, I realized, okay, here I need to go and educate people about 10 years of this war. By this time it was 8 years. It was 22 and 14. And to show what's happening. And to do it quickly. And I did it. So again, I found myself in a situation where I had ability to tell this story, and my heart was giving me these signs. Hey, you need to tell. You need to go back. I did it. And then, same way I found myself is the stories of the kids. So again, it's you following your internal call. You're following your heart. You finding yourself in a situation where something calling you, something telling you, and you believing in yourself, you believing in your vision, you're understanding the topic, and you're going forward.
Follow your heart. I like that.
Yeah.
I guess that could be step number 5. I know it's sometimes it can sound cheesy, but filmmaking is such a personal experience that to be honest, and documentary filmmaking especially, I would say, is one of those places where you interact with so many people, and these stories, they do matter, and it matters how you tell these stories as well. And to do these stories some justice is very important, and I think it's a very difficult job to do, documentary filmmaking. I have to say, Evgeny, thank you so much for this conversation. We enjoyed it. We didn't have to say much, which is great. So
we always like it that way.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of documentary filmmakers will find some fascinating things here in this very short but packed sort of conversation.
And I think for the end, I want to say to all of you guys who are listening, never give up. Failure is a step to success. So when you rejected somewhere, like I was rejected by Vatican, you're not getting the access, find your ways to make it happen. Find the ways, creative ways, not breaking the laws, but creative ways to make it happen and to tell your stories. If there is one way not working, find another way. If I learned that in my past movies that showing the visual footage, which is graphic, affecting negatively ability to tell the story, then find it creatively, like I did it with animation with the kids. So again, rejection is the part of success. It just makes you more stronger, more desirable to continue your work and perfect your work, perfect your craft. So again, continue, believe in yourself, believe in your heart, believe in the call in your heart, and never give up.
Thank you.
Rejection is part of success. That's cool. That's cool.
First of all, giving voice to voiceless through the big cinema screen. Secondly, you starting your storytelling from the ground zero. You educating your audience. Then always be creative. Don't break the laws, but break the rules in achieving your goals. Either storytelling way or when you get into your character. And, I don't know if you're teaching it here, but if you will look at the boards, almost in every editing bay that I used, we had a paper cut. When you put in little stickers with the ideas of the scenes and you're shuffling them and you're trying to navigate your story before you literally get into the final cut with exactly the same string of the stories. So you're massaging. The last one, follow your heart and never give up. That's another important, because you need to believe in yourself and you need to follow your heart when you are finding the story that you belongs. Not belongs in terms of relationship by blood, but your heart and mind belongs. That's the importance.
Good one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well done.